We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy.
U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a ban on Russian oil. So I will get to his announcement. I will get to what this means. I will get to what the U.S. is doing instead. And I'll also get to a clip of Ilhan Omar reacting to this announcement as she gets to the heart of an issue that is being largely ignored. But first, here is Biden with this announcement.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine. This is a move that has strong bipartisan support in the Congress and, I believe, in the country. Americans have rallied to support their Ukrainian people and made it clear we will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war. We made this decision in close consultation with our allies and our partners around the world, particularly in Europe, because a united response to Putin's aggression has been my overriding focus, to keep all NATO and all of the EU and our allies totally united. We're moving forward with this ban, understanding that many of our European allies and partners may not be in a position to join us. The United States produces far more oil domestically than all the European countries combined. In fact, we're a net exporter of energy. So we can take this step when others cannot. But we're working closely with Europe and our partners to develop a long-term strategy to reduce their dependence on Russian energy as well. Our teams are actively discussing how to make this happen, and today we remain united. We remain united in our purpose to keep pressure mounting on Putin and his war machine.
All right, so first, just a reminder, I have another clip coming up of Ilhan Omar discussing another issue at the center of this. But first, so this is clearly an extension of existing economic sanctions, though it's kind of small. I mean, looking at, even Biden alluded to there, that this is not really a big deal for them. Top oil exporters to the U.S., this is between January 2011 and December 2021. You see here, Russia is a tiny, tiny portion of oil exported to the U.S., especially compared to, Canada, or even Mexico and Saudi Arabia, and of course other countries here. So it's not a huge deal for the U.S. to do this. To be a little more clear on that, from ABC News, the impact on Russia would likely be minimal. The U.S. imports a small share of Russia's oil exports and doesn't buy any of its natural gas. Last year, roughly 8% of U.S. imports of oil and petroleum products came from Russia. So what this does do, potentially do, is works to help devalue Russian oil, where you're still going to have places like China and India taking in Russian oil, but they're going to be likely be able to take it in at a lower cost, hurting Russia in the process as it hurts their revenue from their oil exports. And this is, you're already seeing oil producers use this as a way to price gouge. I mean, gas is already going through the roof, the cost of gas, well before this announcement was officially made. And again, 8% last year, not a huge number. And in fact, according to Axios, it's roughly 3% of U.S. crude oil imports and about 1% of total crude oil processed by U.S. refineries. So again, not a big deal, but you are seeing now, at least I know Canada, the U.S. gas is over $4 a gallon now, which is similar to what it was in 2008. And actually, 2008, at this point, just for inflation, gas prices were actually higher in 2008 at over $5 a gallon. But still, that may happen considering this announcement now. But a little more here. So a ban on Russian oil and natural gas would be painful for Europe. Russia provides about 40% of Europe's natural gas for home heating, electricity, and industry uses, and about a quarter of Europe's oil. European officials are looking for ways to reduce their dependence, but it's going to take time. So this 40% number is why you have not seen Europe take the same step that Biden just took, because for them, it would be devastating to put a ban on Russian oil and gas. So this is where now Biden is trying to look for other places to potentially replace Russia's dominance in the market here. So this from, again, ABC. If Russia were eventually shut off from the global market, rogue countries such as Iran and Venezuela might be welcomed back as sources of oil, said Claudio Galimberti, Senior Vice President of Analysis at Rystad Energy. Such additional sources could, in turn, potentially stabilize prices. So this is what Biden is now exploring. Essentially normalizing relations with places like Venezuela and Iran to try and potentially use their oil as a replacement for Russia. So Biden administration officials traveled to Venezuela over the weekend for talks on potentially allowing the country to sell its oil on the international market, helping to replace Russian fuel. Biden may travel to Saudi Arabia as the U.S. works to convince the kingdom to increase its production, and a looming nuclear deal could bring significant volumes of Iranian oil back to the market. Now, this is where we get to the issue. So, look, I have no issue with, normalizing relations with Iran and Venezuela. In fact, I think that's a good thing. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia currently bombing their neighbor, Yemen, where are the sanctions? You're sanctioning Russia. The entire world is sanctioning Russia, as they should. There should be some steps done to try and, hurt Russia here, especially, in particular, Putin and oligarchs in charge. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, they're also doing bombings. So this is where Ilhan Omar comments on how there is clearly a double standard here.
If our issue is that we don't want to buy oil from a powerful country that is conducting a devastating war on its weaker neighbor, I just don't see Saudi Arabia hardly being a principled solution. We know that MPS is obviously going to try to take advantage of this opportunity to once again whitewash his reputation and present himself as a reformer, and we shouldn't fall for that. The truth is, our dependency on oil means that we depend on tyrants, and that has always been true. So if we are obviously serious about what we need to do in regards to the Ukraine context, we should be supporting and defending democracy and human rights, and we should certainly move away. Then we should certainly move away from our dependency on fossil fuels and not be cozying up once again to another tyrant.
So in addition to the issue with Saudi Arabia and their obvious bombing of Yemen that is not being dealt with on the international stage the way that Russia is being dealt with, Ilhan Omar also brings up the need here to quickly move to renewable energy, to move away from fossil fuel. Now, obviously, this can't be done overnight, which is why Europe can't simply, eliminate, 40% of their oil imports overnight, because they don't have the energy necessary to replace that right now in other areas. But this is why there should have already been a massive investment into renewables that would have helped to eliminate a situation like this, where currently there is this need to depend on oil, and there is this fight now to try and replace, or this effort to try and replace the dominance that Russia holds in the market. So this should be a way to try for world leaders like Biden to try and discuss the need to push towards renewable energy. In fact, Biden did mention a bit of that in his speech. But again, rhetoric is one thing, action is another. You're not seeing a big push for the Green New Deal from Joe Biden right now. In fact, if anything, he's trying to put distance between himself and progressives in Congress because of all the attacks he gets from conservatives that somehow he is too far left, when there is no examples of him being too far left. But Democrats and Biden are so often reactionary in terms of their how they operate politically. They are so afraid of turning off conservatives that they themselves turn into conservatives in an attempt trying to appeal to the side of the political spectrum that will never vote for them. It's this ongoing ridiculous battle where they have to try and appeal to these idiots that do not care at all about their success. Now, this also, you can also raise the question, do they even really care? This is often what gets brought up when discussing this sort of how Democrats, move too far right, is that may be their intention, that it's not that they're being pulled because of this idea that they are being, gaslit into trying to appeal to conservatives, but in reality that they are actually themselves conservative, just in, democratic clothing. So I don't know. What I do know is that if we had renewable energy as more of a focus in our lives at this moment, if there was a proper investment into renewable energies 30 years ago, there would be a much different world today for a number of reasons. But you're seeing right now this dependence on oil and how it has allowed Russia to continue their dominance and continue this fight for more and more land.